Monday, the 27th of March 2023, and we face neither east nor west, we face forward. Today, at least 3 are arrested in the AKA murder case in Cape Town last night following a week of police monitoring. 3 in and 1 out. As the Thabo Bester case, I have so many questions, and so does everybody. Things to look out for this week. City of Cape Town will announce tariff increases this coming Thursday, and the South African Reserve Bank expected to increase interest rates sometime this week. Another thing to look out for, Malusi boy. Never mind Where's Waldo, we're playing Where's Malusi, as the City of Cape Town can't find their own former MEC to serve him with a suspension. And finally, Johan Rupert is the richest South African with a fortune of $11 billion US. And like most billionaires, his fortune doubled from 5.5 billion US in 2019 pre-COVID. Welcome to the show. I'm Roscoe Palm, and I'm with super producer Nantle Hopley. How are you doing, man?
I'm good. Yourself?
I'm great, man. Last week's episode was a great one with Heathfield High, and we're going to do some Heathfield High content today. We're gonna delve into that a bit. So those are the headlines for the day. But I just want to talk about this richest South African, Johan Rupert. You know.
Is he really? He's not really. What's his name? Elon Musk. Okay, he was a South African.
Can we really claim him as South African? Do we want to?
Let's just say he's African American.
Let's say he's African. Yeah, that's a good one. But you know, you can say all these things about an individual having $11 billion, but what does it actually mean? So we don't work in. Johan Rupert is a South African. He doesn't work in dollars, US dollars. He works in rand. So I looked up what $11 billion actually is, and that's 21,133,465,000,000. Now start at the very end of that. You'll be happy with 5 million. Never mind 20 trillion 133 billion.
I'm just glad you can read it, actually. I struggle with that big numbers. I'm not Jacob.
I mean, we can only see sort of like the 6 euros. If you win 6 euros in a lottery, you're happy. You're set for life. 7 zeros, that's 10 billion. Then you get to 100 billion, and then the brain just switches off. How many zeros makes a trillion? Well, that's 9 zeros makes a trillion.
I think they must cap it, man.
I don't think billionaires should actually exist.
Okay, I think $1 billion, just $1 billion.
One. And then what do we do? What do we do with them?
Tax them where you can't. All your money goes to all the rest goes to alleviating social ills, poverty, all that other stuff. But I think humanity needs a drive, like a human. You need to have a drive to achieve something, man. I think that will give you that drive, but it needs to be kept somehow.
We have to balance out the profit incentive versus social good. And anytime you have 21 trillion rand, there's a political gravity that comes with that, which means you can shape national and international affairs.
Yep.
So when you hear people talking about things like white monopoly capital and things like that, that's really the undercurrent of what we're talking about. 21 trillion with the T and R, rand.
Sure.
Anyways, we've got some feedback from last week's show about the Heathfield High School, issue, and that's, I'm really happy about how that. We've had a lot of good response. So Rod Solomons writes, "My goodness, how low do these people go? Enough is enough of this corrupt WCED," says Jolene. Raisa says, "Protesting to get Mr. Newman back. We must continue. We need to show WCED how serious we are to get Mr. Newman back." overwhelmingly positive feedback to last week's show, but we also had, we can understand what this sort of issue would do to a schooling community. And I think it's important for me to address that right now, because we did have some feedback about, let's say, Freddie Williams wrote, it's time for Heathfield High School to move forward in supporting Mr. Davids. It's like a cancer. Everybody wants to focus on negativity. And Jason 10 said that the panel did not provide a balanced or unbiased view of the situation at the school. So let's start with Jason. Jason, as I said, I'm under no obligation to provide a balanced or unbiased view of any situation. I really want to represent the side that wasn't really told about it. But the most interesting viewer feedback came from the former MEC for Education in the Western Cape, Debbie Schaefer. So as you can see, Debbie Schaefer is basically a standard issue Democratic Alliance battle axe who currently works for His Majesty's Revenue and Customs Solicitors. She works for the taxman in the UK, but she still tweets and behaves as though she is in fact still the MEC for Education in the Western Cape. So when I tweeted about the program where David Mania said that Heathfield High School is a functional, productive school, and we showed that it is in fact not by talking to learners. We spoke to Mr. Hendricks, a principal. We spoke to the Special Action Committee of Heathfield High School. Debbie Schaefer, she tweets, the outrage over somebody who could not operate in the system and showed the finger to his superiors is very telling. The school was dysfunctional under Newman. If you want to be a politician, get into politics. If you have the nerve, keep it out of schools. Now, the only problem with that is that Debbie Schaefer is completely out of touch with the reality of what's happening in education in the Western Cape. And instead of, under her tenure, the Wesley Newman incident happened. So what happened was the Western Cape Education Department fired Wesley Newman, but it turns out that he's not actually guilty of any of the things that they say he's guilty of. So instead of saying, hey, we made a mistake, please come back to the school, they doubled down and they spent, according to a question answered in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament maybe 10 days ago, that they spent over 3 million rand on this persecution of Wesley Newman. Now, the outrage of somebody who could not operate in the system, basically that's Debbie Schaefer saying that Wesley Newman didn't say, yes sir, no sir, do whatever, I'll do whatever you want me to do. At the time in COVID, there were multiple staff off on comorbidity leave and just in the first wave of COVID, illness, and even in some cases death. The school was not able to operate. But they fired him for an SGB decision. Now, Debbie Schaefer then tweets at me. Let's go to number 6. I tweeted Debbie, the matric pass rate declined from 80% to 61%. The department spent more than 3 million on the persecution. And the NPA found a prima facie case of corruption against one of your officials. Mania must undo your incompetence. Now, she replies, nonsense, nobody has been persecuted. It's called disciplinary action. And then she follows up by saying that in 7, I am the one averse to fact, 60% pass rate, please. Now, even among all those challenges that Heathfield High School faced in the COVID year, they achieved a pass rate of 80%. And I pointed this out to Debbie Schaefer. 84% in the COVID school year of 2020. Now to 61.2% under the Western Cape administration. Not included in that 3 million rand. is the fact that Heathfield High School had to pay two principals, not one but two principals, at least 800,000 rand per principal to administer the school, who did not have assemblies, did not communicate anything to the school community, and continued this persecution. Now, this would be perfectly fine. Debbie Schaefer is often away in the UK collecting tax for His Royal Highness King Charles and Queen Camilla. She doesn't have to come back into this fray. This is the whole point of the thing. But she comes back, she pulls a handbrake turn, does a U-turn, screeches back to the scene of the crime. And let me tell you about the crime, because this is the scene of the crime. Let's go to number 10. So instead of Wesley Newman, they can't find anything against Wesley Newman. And when they can't find evidence, they had two choices. They can either drop the charges or they can continue down this route. It seems that a certain Mr. Ali had approached a teacher at Heathfield High School and tried to convince this teacher to concoct a story accusing Wesley Newman of shutting the school down. Now, this teacher was told to make an affidavit saying that this had happened, that Wesley Newman had contravened one of the edicts of the Western Cape Education Department by tempting him with the offer of a permanent post. This was a temporary teacher. Now, how the Western Cape Education Department uses permanent posts, it's the golden ticket. It dangles these permanent posts in front of individuals that are either co-opted or will show a willingness to fit into a Debbie Schaefer box of what an educator or a principal or a member of the school governing body, how they should behave. So this Mr. Ali then tries to tempt the teacher to effectively make up a story. The teacher then makes an affidavit saying that he or she was bribed, or there was an attempt at bribing them to make up the story. Now, this is a serious matter. The National Prosecuting Authority have to investigate. They investigate. They find a trove of material that basically indicates a prima facie case of corruption emanating from the available evidence. That's what we can see there. But this Mr. Ali died, so they declined to institute a prosecution. How are you going to put a dead man on trial, basically? And that's when Debbie Schaefer exited the chat. As soon as you demonstrate that, in fact, members of her administration, when she was the MEC for Education, was corrupt, a prima facie evidence case of corruption emanates from the available evidence. And that's when she left the chat. Now, I think it's important to address this for two reasons. I know that everybody wants Heathfield High School to become that 84% matric pass rate school again. And that's true. Everybody must unite behind the school, unite behind the best interests of those who are in the school community. But we can't have any kind of reconciliation until we have the truth. What is the evidence of corruption? This must be released to the public. And to my knowledge, the time when the school was the most fruitful, the most productive, was when Wesley Newman was the principal. Now, David Mania has to clean up this mess. Debbie Schaefer, from her seat in collecting taxes from citizens for the King of England, she must choose. She can either be the MEC for Education via Twitter, or she can get out of the polity, allow David Mania to fix the mistakes that she made under her tenure, or she can continue to be embarrassed on Twitter. I'm with Colin Geoffreys. Colin, can you when the NPA can we put the number 10 up for Colin? When the NPA, in a case like this, let me just introduce you properly. Colin, you are an attorney. you've been practicing law for many years, and you've seen criminal cases, or every sort of case that you can possibly see, and you're here to help us understand the labyrinthine conventions of the law. In this case, when the NPA defines a prima facie case of corruption, what does that mean in normal English?
Well, this term prima facie is bandied about by the layperson, and politicians most certainly always do this. All right? When an investigation is done into any offense or alleged offense that has been committed, the preliminary investigation would lead to certain findings. And based on those findings, if they are positive towards what you're looking for, but you must always remember this, when people want to look for an issue, so they engineer their investigation towards finding things that would support their narrative. And they would use that and say, fine, we have gathered information that would give us the opportunity to investigate this further. So there is some evidence that would lead to a conviction.
So prima facie, am I pronouncing correctly? Because I read it as I pronounce it in different ways every time I read the word. Prima facie or prima facie?
Prima facie is the acceptable pronunciation. It's a Latin pronunciation, a Latin word. People who have not studied Latin would not know how to pronounce it, that they use the normal English vernacular to interpret the Latin.
So what does it mean in English? It means there's a clear...
On the face of it, it means you haven't got into in-depth investigation, but on the surface, you would then get some sort of inkling of what you could gather if you do dig. Right? It's like an iceberg. We see the top of the iceberg. Right? But the majority, the bigger part of the iceberg is underwater. All right. You see the iceberg floating on top. You say, hey, hang on a second, there is an iceberg there. So, which means that now we need to investigate further to see how deep it goes. That's basically what you're looking at.
So in this case, the National Prosecuting Authority found an iceberg, and they said, listen, we would ordinarily investigate this. We think there's something there. The guy died. So we can't prosecute a dead person, or we can't, it would be a waste of our resources to prosecute somebody who'd passed away.
That is true. If the alleged perpetrator is no longer there, you can't really prosecute a non-person that doesn't exist. However, when you have corruption is not only engineered by one single person. Right? If there's an institution that is involved, which means there are other personalities and persons that are also involved in the corruption. So is there a case to be made? Yes, for disciplinary action, yes. But perhaps not to lead to a conviction, but to eradicate the wrath that's a seep into our society. Corruption at every level. So you need to investigate, and you need to find out how can we then eradicate this rot that is crept into our society.
If there is, in a case where the NPA declines to prosecute, some mechanism whereby the information that they've gathered can be released to the public?
No, unfortunately.
That is unfortunate.
That's unfortunate. However, if in this instance there's an institution that is involved, like the education department, all right, there is nothing stopping the education department themselves taking this further, because it involves members of their education department. So they need to find out more about it. What happened? Why did it happen? And how can we stop this from happening? So because the NPA stops their investigation, it doesn't necessarily mean, because the person has passed on, that they will stop any other further investigation to eradicate this corruption that has come into the system.
I would love to live in that world where institutions find that they themselves have been guilty of wrongdoing, investigate themselves, and self-correct. I mean, I think it's a la-la land to think that the Western Cape Education Department or any department of anything, anywhere, will investigate itself. It requires the eating one's own, in a way.
That is also true, but at the same time as well, you may have individuals or organizations that may take it upon themselves to investigate, right? And should they find any criminal activity or criminal in conduct, right? There is nothing stopping them from doing a private prosecution. There is a proviso in our system that allows for private prosecutions to take place against certain people and institutions. In this case, even if the person is higher up in the Department of Education, for that matter, that finds an Anglo-Second is gone like unattended to. So a private institution can do that, provided they got the evidence that would lead to a conviction.
I'll come back to the costs of litigation a little bit later, but I think what we really want to do was get to your legal questions, because it's not often that we have the service of a world-class attorney to just answer the stuff for free for you tonight, with a disclaimer. Any advice that you get here, you should not institute that advice by yourself. You have to get proper legal consultation. It's like if you institute any advice, legal advice that you got without any knowledge of the legal system or without being an expert, that's like watching a YouTube video on how to overhaul your car and you've never before turned a screwdriver in your life. So be smart, get a lawyer. Try only what's that phrase about a fool has represents himself in court. A fool has himself for an attorney.
A client, yes.
A client. What's the full?
It's basically a
only a fool represents. If you represent yourself, you have a fool for a client.
For a client, correct.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
Yeah.
So look, I want to get to some of the questions. Can we go to number 11? Yes, this one comes from Lerata. I have a daughter who is in Free State. She's 5 years old, and a mother who we are no longer a couple is refusing access to my daughter to visit me during school holidays. So I need your assistance, Colin. So this is obviously somebody who's this is a question about parental rights and what rights are afforded to the parents and the child. I think in this case it makes it harder by geographic location. But what are the principles of the law as it should be applied?
Okay, like you initially said, you should not take any opinion here as legal advice.
Yes.
Basically, because that question is rather sketchy. All right. When you go to a consult with an attorney, the attorney will ask you lots of questions with regards to the rights of access and contact with the child. It's important to find out firstly whether the persons were married, because it impinges or has an effect on whether you do have this access to the child. The right is yours in terms of the Children's Act. Now, if the persons were married, you'll give a different type of advice where that is concerned. And if there has been a divorce, there would have been a consent or a settlement agreement. That will dictate how care and contact with the child would then, the parents would conduct themselves in terms of guardianship and custody of the child. If they were unmarried, all right, there's a different scenario. They had a child out of wedlock. However, our Children's Act has a special proviso with regards to unwed fathers and their access to the children. There are certain conditions. In fact, basically 3 simple things.
Is it particularly about fathers' access or is it parents?
Normally it's for the father, because let's put it this way. The mother is left holding the baby, basically.
Most of the time, yes.
Most of the
Yes.
time. That's what happens. And the father sort of moves out of the way and sort of says, well, I father the child, that's it. And normally what happens is, very often, in fact, when the child is very young, the father steps back. And only when the child then grows up to a age where the father is able to play or communicate with the child, then he wants to take an active role in it. It's sad. But however, that's what happens in our society. But having said that, the unwed father does have rights, all right? Provided, of course, at the outset, when the child is born, for that matter, he must acknowledge himself to be the parent of the child, the biological father of the child, right at the inception. Right. He must also pay maintenance for the child, or he must make an effort to pay maintenance to the child, for the child. And that sort of gives him the opportunity to say, I am doing this for you, okay? And then I should have access to my child. But however, having said that, the maintenance should not be held as a dangling carrot to say, Father, pay me maintenance, then you can see the child. It doesn't work that way.
So there's separate, access and maintenance are separate issues.
Total separate issues. But like I said, unwed fathers, if you have those three criteria have been fulfilled, there shouldn't be any reason why you cannot have access to your child. Now, and if that has been done by this gentleman, he says they were a couple. By reading that, I would say that they were not married. I'm just assuming, which I shouldn't be doing. We should get the facts. However, there is nothing stopping them to approaching the children's court for assistance. All right? And then the children's court will assist them in drawing up a parenting plan. There are a lot of mediation processes in lots of children's court. That's what happens, and people assist with this sort of thing. And of course, then we have our family advocates offices throughout the country, okay, whom you can approach as well to assist in this, to give access to the child. The family advocates office is responsible for all minor children through the courts, of course, because the court is the upper guardian of all minor children, irrespective of whether you're the father married or unmarried.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So the court is the upper guardian of all minor children.
Okay, so they can intercede when necessary.
They can intercede whenever. Okay. So yes, this person should approach, firstly try and negotiate a settlement with the mother so that he has evidence with regards to having approached the mother to form a contact and care with the child. Our Children's Act, Section 18 of the Act, sort of gives you all the necessary information that you require with regards to access and contact with the child. And failing that, he's got to prove that when he goes for assistance, that he has attempted first to negotiate a settlement to get access and contact with the child. And if that fails, then he can approach the children's court with the assistance of the family advocate's office. He can also do that. There's also assistance available for persons that are not, we'll come to that eventually with regards to litigating they can't afford to. There's legal aid available for that process as well. Yes, you can. You mentioned geographical differences as well, or distances, whether it can still be done. All right? It may not be as often as you would like it to be. And it also depends on the age of the child. How old is the child? Can the child travel? Is the child able to go alone? Will the child need accompaniment to visit the father? Alternatively, is the father able to visit the child by traveling to the child, if the child can't travel to him? Right. In that case, then you look at school holidays for that matter. During school holidays, can they make arrangements for the child to be visited during school holidays and for the child to visit the father during school holidays? That can be arranged. And various other issues, instances as well, like when you have public or religious holidays for that matter, Christmas, New Year, that kind of stuff. You make arrangements. Alternative years, I'll spend Christmas with you and New Year this year, and I'll spend Christmas and New Year with my dad. That kind of, mother and father can arrange this kind of thing. There's nothing stopping them from doing that kind of arrangement. Yes.
So this person's first port of call would be the family advocate. Well, first to try to come to some sort of arrangement with the mother, and then to approach the family advocate.
Correct.
Okay.
And then, of course, the children's court is available as well to approach with regards to access and contact with the child. I mean, with this day and age now with media, access and contact doesn't have to be physical, right? We've got the virtual reality media that's available. You can have access to the child via video call, right? Telephone access to the child. Those type of media are available as well. So those sort of consent can be given by the parent who has the child to the parent who does not have the child. Sometimes maybe the father's got the child and the mother doesn't have the child. So you can have this contact as well arranged.
What happens in a situation where, let's say we have the reverse situation, where the father is a complete deadbeat, doesn't support the kids financially, tries to actively avoid all kinds of contact and responsibility, financial and emotional, to the child? What recourse does the mother have, or the primary caregiver in this example?
We often get this kind of questions. All right. Unfortunately, you cannot force someone to see somebody, even if it's your own child. All right. But obviously it goes against him for future reference, for that matter, if he wants to have contact with the child. Okay. If, for instance, for argument's sake, the father does not want to have anything to do with the child while the child is growing up, he has no contact whatsoever with the child. He doesn't want to accept his financial responsibilities also. The mother can also approach the maintenance court even though they were not married.
How does that work?
Right. The maintenance court is available to anyone, right, who has a child.
Who is the primary caregiver?
Who's the primary caregiver.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily have to be the mother. It could be a grandparent or the guardian of the child. And if they know that the father is able to provide and has the capacity to provide for the child, they can approach the maintenance court for the maintenance of the child. So it doesn't avoid or shirks his responsibility with that is concerned. The maintenance court is normal. You go to the court and the court will assist you. They have clerks at the court. You have documentation with the assist you to apply for maintenance. And the court takes it upon themselves to send the messenger of the court to serve the father the documents. So the mother doesn't incur the expenses, or the guardian doesn't incur the expenses, the initial expenses, to get to the person who's responsible, obliged to pay maintenance for the child. So there are ways of doing that.
So then an agreement is made between the parties through the court, to the maintenance court, about the financial arrangement that's made between the parties.
Oh yes, it's also very important when somebody goes for maintenance. All right, one must be realistic about what is required, what is needed, and in order to do that, although we do not see this, but normally mothers that have the primary care of the child and they need financial assistance, it's necessary to keep a record of all expenses they have incurred, to the very least important thing that may be required, like buying diapers, buying food, buying clothing, nanny, going out for daycare, up to the prenatal care as well, while the child is born, during that process as well, and during the time before the child goes to school, preschool, keeping expenses. And you need to keep a record of that. So in order to approach the maintenance court, a minimum requirement is that you got to prove at least maintenance, or you spend that money on the child for at least 3 months.
Keep your receipts. Keep your receipts.
Very important. All vouchers that you got. And if anybody gives you money, They didn't give you a note say, I lent you money for the upkeep of the child. Right. Remember this also. While we look at what is expended in terms of costs, we forget that the child is living under a roof. Right. So the child occupies a space. So if there's rent being paid, you must allocate a child's portion for that rent as well as part of the expenses.
This is what the court will determine based on the documents, or
Well, yes, if you're paying rent and you're paying 2,000, for argument's sake, 2,000 rand for the room, and you, the child, are there in that room, obviously the child is responsible for 50% of it.
so we're at the stage where we've calculated that the primary caregiver is owed X amount of money per month, and then the father or the other party just decides, nah, why? For what? Why? Why must I pay this? And they don't pay, and they continue to not pay and not pay and not pay.
Yes, but once you go to the courts, okay, and you get a maintenance order against the father, okay, the father was not, or the person is obliged to pay the maintenance, not obliged to pay the full 100%. You look at what is the earning capacity of the person that has the child in their care. Are they earning or are they not earning? All right, and on the other side, the father, for that matter, is he earning or is he not earning any money? And if either party is earning more than the other, they need to contribute pro rata in terms of what their earning capacity is. Sometimes in some instances, the mother earns more than the father. So if the expenses for the child is X amount and she's earning, and in terms of percentage-wise ratio, is 60-40. So she's responsible for 60% of the costs, and the other person for the 40% of the costs. Depends on what they're earning. So that's how it is determined.
But
So-
what happens if I just, for example, let's say I will not pay. I'll just decide not to pay. I'm going to Malusi boy and disappear into the night. You will not serve me with anything. And so what are the mechanisms left to the person who needs to get this money?
Okay, this is why it's important to get a maintenance order.
Because it's an order of the court.
It's an order of the court.
How is it enforced?
All right. Now, once you've got the order of the court, which means that the person is obliged to pay maintenance in terms of what the maintenance order says. Okay. If the person then shirks that responsibility and runs away, all right, you can go to the court and the certain circumstances, in second instance, the court can issue a warrant for his arrest.
So you can go to jail for not paying maintenance.
Yes, there is proviso made in the Act for that. The court is loath to imprison a person who is earning, right? Which means you are going to imprison him. You want maintenance, okay? And then you're cutting the sources from where he's going to get the money to pay you maintenance. So the court is very loath when that is concerned. But however, there are instances where the court has imposed certain penalties and imprisonment on a part-time basis. Let's put it this way.
A part-time jail
Yes.
sentence.
Okay.
How
So
does
it
that
means
work?
During the time where you're earning and you're working, you're okay. And they impose a sentence for you. You serve it over after hours, like over the weekends.
So I'll go to jail for the weekend.
Yes. That's possible.
I've never heard of that
That is
before.
possible.
That's actually
It can be done.
where would you go, practically speaking, right?
Yes.
Where would you go in Cape Town in this? Would you go to Paulsmore? Would you go? What are these part-time jails?
Well, there are holding cells, okay? There are intermediary cells that people are awaiting trial, that kind of stuff as well. They won't put you in a criminal section, obviously, right? Like Paulsmore, that's hardened criminals. There are certain sections they can put you. They can put you in a police cell for that matter.
So in this hype, I can't get this image out of my head. There's this guy, didn't pay maintenance. He has to go sit in Steenberg police cells from Friday 6:00 till Sunday night, maybe.
Yes, you must
to
come
just
back to
sit
go
there
to
with
work.
like that with the drunk people.
It can be done.
Sort of, that's
Available. It can be done. Yes, I mean that type of thing. Show that there is a system that cannot be sidestepped, right? So it will send a message to people as well. Meet your obligations in terms of the court order. You need to do that.
Yeah, pay your mang, basically.
Pay your money, yes.
Yeah. So look, I hope that in some way helped to answer Lerata's question. So we're gonna move on to other things. Matrimonial issues. So I would love to have been a fly in the wall of this incident that this person discussed. And this is a query I got over WhatsApp. My fiance and I are about to get married. I suggested that we get a prenuptial agreement, but it costs money. My fiance and I agree that we are not millionaires, so there are no assets to protect. Also, I don't want to make a big thing of this because the first and only time we discussed this, it didn't end well. Colin, what's your advice? I won't ask you to give any Dr. Phil advice about how this person should manage their
the marital affairs.
Yeah,
Okay.
but the prenuptial agreements, or as we call them, anti-nuptial contracts. How do they work? What are they? How do they protect the parties? And
Yeah. Okay.
how can this discussion go very well?
Yeah. I think the person may also be concerned about if you have assets that you want to protect. All right. A prenup is sort of advisable, not only for that purpose also. Okay. The prenup is important because it protects the person against third-party claims. If a third party wants to sue. Right. So when I say third-party sues, now if a person is in business and he's got a business venture and he's got a lot of assets where that is concerned, okay, and then he marries somebody who does not have all that, okay, and then eventually, then when they get married, they sort of bequeath certain things which they're entitled to do in terms of the antenuptial contract to give certain gifts to their spouse, either way, and if it's bequeathed to them, and also, the spouse may have also assets that they bring into the marriage when they get married.
So let's look at it at like a practical example.
Yeah.
I'm Jay-Z, and I'm marrying Beyonce,
Yeah.
who's 20 million times richer than me.
Yes.
Beyonce wants to protect her stuff because in case Jay-Z wants to F around and find out, So then they would enter into a prenuptial,
A contract,
a
yes.
contract that says, me, Jay-Z, I keep all my things coming into the relationship. Beyonce keeps her wealth, real wealth.
Correct. And you find that these artists as well, they have a clause. They say that if you do have a issue where you are unfaithful to me, there's the penalty. You pay me out of your estate X amount of couple billion or $1 billion, that type of thing.
So I'm Jay-Z.
So you can't put anything into your contract.
And Beyonce has just released Lemonade,
Yes.
which details in harrowing blow-by-blow account my alleged affairs with somebody else. Now, Beyonce has got better lawyers because she's Beyonce. And she's put some clause into our agreement that says, if I'm unfaithful, I need to pay her the money now, or whatever the case may be. So is it that explicit?
Yes, it's a contract.
And I have to pay Beyonce for.
Yes.
But she already made all that money from Lemonade. If I hadn't cheated on Beyonce, no Lemonade.
It makes no difference. The thing is that when you can add anything in your contract, in your antenuptial contract, right? So it becomes binding between the parties. Now, an ANC in this case, where this lady is concerned as well.
ANC meaning anti-nuptial contract, not African National Congress.
No, an anti-nuptial contract. Okay. There are two types, basically. It's with accrual and without accrual. Okay. Like I said, initially, it protects third-party litigation against the party that wants to claim against you, right? It protects the party that is not party to the claim.
So in this example, again, and it's getting a bit tedious for me to be Jay-Z. But
Yes.
I'm Jay-Z. Somebody sues me because I have an anti-nuptial contract with Beyonce. She's not liable for anything.
Correct. Then they cannot touch Beyonce's estate
Yes.
because it's excluded.
They can't anyway because
can't
she's
touch
got a
it.
lot of bodyguards. But yeah.
Right. Of course, bodyguards as well protecting the funds that she has
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
besides the actual body. So this is it. So yes. So which means that's what the ANC does, the anti-nuptial contract does for you. If you are sued by a third party, they cannot then touch your spouse's assets. Right. But the issue then arises between the parties on the dissolution of the marriage.
I will get to that
Yeah.
now. I just want to say, like, so in this case, this guy or girl, or I'm not sure, they can say that, let's say life happens and they get into an accident that's not their fault. The insurance doesn't cover the car. Any debts that they incur would not be for both of them as if they're married in community or property. In that case, it would only be for the one person. Am I understanding that correctly in how that scenario would work, that the liabilities are not shared between the two parties of the marriage?
You're talking about community property or
Anti-nuptial. Anti-nuptial.
Anti-nuptial.
Yeah. If something happens to me and my wife doesn't have to pay for the liabilities that I incur.
Correct.
So that would be a good, because most people think of prenups and saying like, the element of cheating is obviously front and center, the way that prenups are discussed,
Yeah.
and it becomes about the assets. It's not about like really, nobody talks about how an anti-nuptial contract would protect both people.
Absolutely. It does protect them. Right. And also with regards to the cost, it costs like 2,500 Rand to get an anti-nuptial contract drawn up.
It's a lot of money for people
who don't have money,
paycheck,
yes.
yeah.
But at the same time, you could go to a notary, who is the person that will draw up the anti-nuptial contract, and explain to them your situation, and they will also discount it for you. Unfortunately, there are disbursements that you got to pay to the deeds office for registration of the anti-nuptial contract, right? Which of course you got to pay, right? So with regards to the fees that the notary would charge you, they can be discounted depending on your circumstances, your financial circumstances, that type of thing. Yes, it can be done. So there are a lot of notaries that are willing to do these things for people. In fact, I believe also, and I've seen this happen as well, when you have these shows at the malls where people display bridal paraphernalia and receptions and bridal wear and that kind of stuff. You have some attorneys also have stalls there. They offer these services free for anti-nuptial contracts. By doing that, they gain clients for the future.
And they are at what was that? What's that? Convention center. These bridal convention.
Correct. Yes.
So you have one store selling them the bridal dress, and you have another store right next to it saying, like, listen, in case shit happens,
Yeah, there you are. and they offer their service free of charge. They don't charge you for it.
So you were saying that there are two different types of anti-nuptial contracts: with
Correct.
accrual
And without
accrual.
Right.
What are the differences?
Well, when you have a contract, anti-nuptial contract, with accrual, all right, which means then all your assets, you can list, when you have an anti-nuptial contract, you list your assets, right? If you want to name them and say, listen, this is excluded from from the contract itself, and you give a value to it, right? You can do that both in the accrued anti-nuptial contract or without accrual. Okay, you can do that, but basically, when it excludes all assets, right? It excludes everything. Then, which means then the person that your spouse then is not entitled to anything that you have brought into the marriage, or what you have accumulated during the course of your marriage. So it's totally excluded.
Okay, so
if your estate grows,
yeah.
all right, while you're married, your spouse then cannot claim anything from that. It remains, what's yours is yours and what's mine is mine, even throughout the marriage. That's when you exclude the accrual.
So with accrual is what we two parties bring things into the marriage, and then the things that we acquire through our relationship becomes the commons.
It's a common estate normally, right, if you have a joint estate. But without accrual, there isn't a joint estate. Your states, each individual estate is separate and independent. Your growth of your estate stays yours, and the growth of your spouse's estate stays theirs as well. But with accrual, okay, so what happens is this. Your assets from the date of the marriage remains yours if you got a value, all right? And of course, and then upon dissolution of the marriage, that's when you then decide what is the value of your estate thereafter during the course of your marriage. Okay? So the party whose estate has grown, right? That party then's got to pay the person or the spouse whose estate hasn't grown 50% of that to equalize
50% of what they have.
To equalize their accrued assets during the course of the marriage. So basically, it's like getting married in community of property, but only from the date of the marriage.
Right, I see.
Right. Whereas with the community of property, whatever you had prior to your marriage and what you accumulated during the course of your marriage all gets into the pool.
So,
but with an antinuptial contract, with accrual, whatever you acquired prior to your marriage stays yours.
and if you get married and you don't have any prenuptial, the assumption is that you're married in community of property. Your assets are then put into one basket called the Mr. and Mrs. basket. And if the marriage is dissolved, then it's a 50-50 thing.
It's split, yes.
Well, let's talk about about divorce. Divorce is a messy, expensive process. But it's something that you do need good legal advice for, good cold light of day, calculated legal advice that can cut through, I think oftentimes the emotion of a split. Why is access to the law is quite an expensive thing. But if you don't have the money to get divorced, or rather employ an attorney, is there a way that you could then...
Oh, most certainly, yes, most certainly. But before I go on that, it's another thing I want to touch on with the antenuptial contracts, in fact. A very interesting case that was now determined in the Constitutional Court, the Grayling versus the Home Affairs, where Section 7, subsection 3, subsection A of the Divorce Act came into play. All right? It concerned people that were married pre-84, that were discriminated against, mostly the women, all right, that were married with antenuptial contract without accrual, which means that if when they were divorced after 84 and they were married prior to 84, they got nothing. There was no redistribution of their assets. And in most cases, where the lady has been the household home executive, didn't go out and earn money, took care of the children, took care of the household, was disinherited and got nothing. So in fact, the Constitutional Court declared that to be unconstitutional. So what does that also say is this as well? Even though if you do have an antenuptial contract without accrual, even after 84, which means then, if in certain circumstances, okay, The wife tends to the household, takes care of the children, and she can prove that the duration of the marriage, she's done certain things, she's been excluded from the economy and to earn her own living, that kind of stuff. The court has a discretion to have a redistribution of that assets as well.
That's really progressive.
Right.
Actually.
So yes, it's always been there. Right. So we need to take advantage of that. Lots of people don't know that. But yes, if you've got a good attorney and attorney knows his onions, of course, yes, you can get that stuff.
So to access this legal knowledge, you need to access a good lawyer.
You need to get to an attorney, of course, yes. You need to get a divorce lawyer. You need to get somebody who does family law, who has knowledge about these things. Coming back to your question with regards to divorce and whether they can, if it's cheap or expensive or not. Lots of people do not know this, all right? The divorce courts, okay, you can now get divorced in the regional court, right? You got the magistrate's court, you get the district court, and you get the regional court. The regional court is the cheaper way of going to get divorced. It may take longer because of the court rolls are rather full at all times, and it's inundated with cases. And in the High Court as well, you can get, High Court has overall jurisdiction anyway. So you can get divorced in the High Court, you can get divorced in the regional court, divorce court. You do not need an attorney basically to do your divorce. If you do not have any assets to protect and you want to get divorced.
I mean, that's in situations where, let's say, one party just really wants out because they either in danger or they don't need to be bound by the fact that they can't afford an attorney to get divorced. So there's no...
Absolutely correct.
What are the regional courts in and around Cape Town? I just discovered the other day that there's a court in Muizenberg that I never knew about.
Yes, but that's a magistrate's court. Muizenberg falls under Wynberg.
Okay, so
the regional court in Wynberg will have jurisdiction over divorces in that area, right? Muizenberg, Fischhoek, Constantia, basically all those outlying areas that's close there would fall under the Wynberg magisterial area. You got one there. You've got regional court there. You've got regional court in Belleville as well. Blue Downs also has a regional court as well that handles divorces as well. Cape Town Regional Court as a divorce court as well.
Okay.
All right. So yes, there are regional courts all over. Where magistrate courts are, regional courts can do that. At the regional court, the registrar of each court can assist you with your divorce without a lawyer. It takes time. Unfortunately, you got to go there, spend some time, get to be interviewed by the registrars that's available. There's forms that you can pull off the internet and you can fill out. And they assist you with this as well, okay, to fill out the forms and to lodge the summons against wherever you want to sue for divorce. The only expenses that you would incur then is to pay the sheriff's fees to serve it. All right? And once you get that, the process then will go ongoing, and then the court will assist you to further on and get into that system without getting an attorney. At the same time, you find that as well, where people do not have the funds to get divorced, any capacity is very low, all right? They can approach the legal aid for assistance, all right? And if you qualify and you earn if you're below a certain threshold, you get free legal advice, and they assist you with that as well. And of course, you've got UWC, the legal clinic as well. You've got UCT legal clinic. They would also assist you if you approach them with regards to that. Not only criminal matters, also civil matters they do, and divorce is one of them as well. You can approach these institutions to assist you.
That's good to know, because oftentimes people can't afford a lawyer, and everybody needs to consult with an attorney at some stage in their life. If you only have to consult with an attorney once, then you're very, very lucky. At least a few times you need good, solid legal advice.
Correct, yes. Yeah. The issues then arise during divorces is where minor children are concerned. All right. The access and contact, like the question that we had initially. All right. Then, of course, like I said, your divorce summons then gets given to the family advocate's office.
Okay, so those two courts work together when they were children involved.
Family Advocate's Office is an independent body outside of the courts as well. Now, the courts, they would normally give this summons to the Family Advocate's Office, and the Family Advocate's Office then will take a proactive role by contacting the parties
What would
and coming to interview with the parties to sort of find out how best to determine a parenting plan for the access and contact of the minor child between the parties.
So the family advocate's assessment of the domestic situation would then inform the court as to what the custody arrangements would be going forward.
Correct, yes. I mean, attached to the Family Advocate's Office are the social workers as well. So the social worker will approach them, discuss with them the situation, visit them, do home visits as well. That's what they would do.
I want to move on to a different situation, because as we all need to interface with the law from time to time,
Yeah.
we all interface with law enforcement from time to time. And I got a heated message over WhatsApp, but they're still down to this. Is a Metro cop allowed to search your vehicle?
Under certain circumstances, yes. All right. Okay. You find that in our system, there are various bodies that are controlled by different acts. All right. The South African Police Act, for that matter, right, allows for roadblocks. And they allow for random searches of vehicles as well. Okay. But the roadblocks are set up for specific reasons, because they've got some knowledge or some intel with regards to a certain crime that may be in progress or going to happen, or some other issues or the other. But normally if they have a general roadblock, they're probably looking for licenses, and they only do that. Right? You might have noticed as well, when you get a roadblock, they will stop and say, do you have your license? Can I check your car? Can I check your disc? And that type of thing. So they only check that, and they let you go past. Sometimes they have roadblocks to check whether the person is driving under the influence of alcohol. All right. Then they will check you. They test you to say, listen, this is what... Now, the roadblocks are set up for specific issues, specific instances, what they can do. They can't go beyond that. Right. So it's given by the Commissioner of Police. This is what you are going to do. This is what you're going to conduct yourself with. And that's it. Sometimes... like when a person's car is searched, because they've got intel that drugs are being smuggled in that area or through that road, or something is happening. Yes, they can do that. But what happens is this. It's sad though, but it's human nature. You get people that are totally innocent. The minute they see the roadblock, then they want to avoid it by saying, hey, there's a string of cars here, I don't want to go there. And then they turn around and get another road, and they come around the other side. Now, that unfortunately creates a suspicion, right, that you're trying to hide something. And if the police then sees you, the person manning the roadblock sees this happening, they will give chase and they'll find you. Right. Then they act on a reasonable suspicion. All right. Then they can search you. They can get you out of your car, search your person, because you've given them probable cause to do that by acting or conducting yourself in a certain fashion. Okay, so yes and no. They can search you. You can be searched without a warrant, but under certain circumstances. All right. Lots of people say, but can they come into my house? Can I be searched? But the police also, when they approach you, say if they come to your house and knock on the door, they say, but they don't tell you, listen, I want to search your house. They say, can I come in, please?
So they're asking you for permission?
Correct.
And you say, you granted permission.
To come into your house.
It's game over.
You give them consent, yes.
So the correct response should be what?
What is about? Why do you need to come in? Sometimes they want to inform you of an accident or something happened to someone that's close to you. Right? You got to ask them first, what is this about? You don't, because it's a police officer, you just can't invite them into your home.
Yes.
Right? It could be somebody also dressed up in a police uniform that wants to rob you. Right. So that type is important to ask the question, what is this about? Before you invite them into your house. Because the minute you invite them into your house, you give them the consent. Okay. That's one of the instances where they can come into your house and search your house without a warrant. The other instances where somebody can come into your house or can search with a warrant is that they know that if they do apply for a warrant, they will get it under those circumstances. Right? They're absolutely sure that when they go to get the warrant, that the warrant would be issued to them. Then they would come in and they can search you. Right. But then there's a way that they got to conduct themselves when they come to search. We'll get to that eventually. And the other situation where they can come into your house as well, when they have a suspicion of a crime being committed or is about to be committed, then they can conduct a search without a warrant.
That leaves a lot of wiggle room for law enforcement, to be honest. Yeah?
Yes, but they are controlled by strict rules as well. Okay? Like I said, they've got to be specific as to what they are going to search for. You cannot come and do a general search with the hope of finding somebody in order to convict somebody. Search warrant doesn't work that way.
So it can't be a dragnet, effectively.
Exactly.
Right, but you've mentioned that when the Metro Police or any police, traffic police, want to have a roadblock, they need to send it up the flagpole. The provincial commissioner signs off on that.
Yes.
And then there's a scope to that permission being granted.
Granted, correct.
How do I, as a citizen who doesn't have my lawyer with me at that particular moment, check what that certificate says? Am I entitled to? What are my steps if I want to see whether this is a bona fide road block or not?
Yes, you have the right to ask the police officer, what is this roadblock about? What is it for? Why are you checking?
What would they present me with if I ask?
They would normally tell you, listen, we have the roadblock to check for drunken driving, or we're just checking your car licenses, your discs, to see your license, and your driver's license and your car disc as well. That's what we're doing. Right, it's a general roadblock. But sometimes they don't tell you what it's about, all right? Then you say, listen, but I need to know what it's about. But sometimes somebody's smuggling firearms, for that matter. They got information that somebody's coming with firearms into the town or something like this. Right, or crime is going to be committed. They will tell you, listen, we're looking for firearms.
Am I entitled to see that certificate that's presented to the...
Yes, normally the officer in charge would have a copy of that roadblock warrant.
People don't know that stuff.
Yeah.
You know? I think that as soon as you ask a police officer or actually anybody in a position of authority, look, show me the certificate, show me the proof, show me that you're not allowed to. They get a little bit snippy.
They do, yes. Yeah, because why are you questioning me, that kind of stuff. Also, another scenario is like when a police officer sets up a speeding camera, right? He needs to get authority signed by the commissioner as well for that person to set up the camera at that specific place as well.
How often do they not get that certificate?
They need to do it at all times. You're entitled to stop your car and ask the police officer, can I see that authorization for you to be speed trapping at that specific point as well? You can do that. You have the right to do that.
You're driving down the M5.
Yes.
Or Rosemead Avenue, whatever.
Yes.
And you see that flash and it's like, oh, damn it.
Yeah.
That's $800 immediately. You know in your heart, that sinking feeling that you get.
Yes.
And you stop and you can go to the officer in charge, like, excuse me, do you have the certificate to be here? And if they don't have it, you can forget about that fine.
Yes, that type of thing. But also remember this here, they're very cautious where that is concerned. You'll find that they normally would trap you where they have the signs and speed limit.
Yes.
Right. Which means you've been given warning already that there is going to be a speed trap there. So in that instances, they may be excluded from having that certificate because it's been warned that there's a camera and there is a speed trap at any time that can be set up on that stretch of road. But where there is no warning, there's no board whatsoever telling you there's going to be a speed trap, yes, you can stop and say, have you got the authority to do this? In most cases, This happens on when you're traveling from Durban to Johannesburg on the roads, open road, away from everything else, and there's no signs whatsoever. They tell you we go to speed trap. But normally the general rule is that you abide by the speed limit, the National Road Traffic Act, in terms of maintaining the speed limits. But yes, you can ask for authority.
What I would say, I really want to see somebody do that this weekend or within the next week. Go Facebook Live when you get speed trap and ask the officer in charge of the roadblock, "Excuse me, sir, can I please see the certificate? Because I don't believe you're actually allowed to be here. I want to see what happens."
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
Somebody
Somebody else, that's for other people to do.
Absolutely.
To try
But
it
you're
first.
entitled to do that.
I'll follow
can
you.
do that.
I'm next, but
And there's no reason why the traffic officer should refuse you that either.
exactly.
Okay. Like he asked you to produce your license.
You have to produce it.
You produce a license. Okay. The other thing that also people ask questions about as well, when they do go to the police station for whatever reason, right, voluntarily they come in to make a statement and issues, and there's no charge being put to them and they're not arrested. Sometimes the police go beyond their overstep their scope. All right. And they say, "Can I take your fingerprints? Can I take your photograph?" You don't have to do that. You don't have to volunteer that if they have not charged you.
If you're in a position where the police are talking to you, there's immediately a power imbalance where you want to be shown to be cooperating, but in that cooperation, you give away a lot of your rights, which may then be systemically abused by, say, a policeman looking to make a case against you where it doesn't exist. Or if you are being questioned by a police officer, what is the thing that you have to do?
Well, it depends. If you are being questioned for an investigation, right? You can either answer or you can refuse to answer. You say, I will not give any statement or answer your question without the presence of my attorney. Or if you are arrested for whatever reasons and they want to take a warning statement, that's what they call a warning statement. You can, that type of thing as well. You can say, "Listen, I do not wish to make any statement. I will speak in court." So they can't force you to do that. But having said as well, regards to search as well, warrants and things like that, one must also be mindful of the Constitution as well. All right, the individual has rights: your right to privacy, your right to your dignity, right, your freedom and security as well. All those rights must not be infringed by the person who's conducting the search. So the conduct of the police is very important when they do searches as well, when they enter anybody's homes, and even they want to search your car. They got to treat you with dignity, right, and respect your privacy. That's what they need to do. And like I said, unfortunately, police officers become overzealous. They overstep the mark, and they go beyond their scope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Colin, I want to ask you one more thing, one more legal question. I also want to.
I've got one as well.
Okay, Nantal, you go.
Okay, mine won't be that long. So I'm making this example, right? So let me put that one. So myself, say I'm making an example. Myself and Roscoe, we go into not a business really. We don't sign anything. We're just doing something together, right? We're doing a little project together. So now, but hopefully the project will eventually become a business, right? So we buy, say, this thing together, right? I give 50%, he gives 50%. But then 2 years go on, we use this thing, and now we get better stuff, and this thing just stands on the side, but that just happened, right? So now, Roscoe decides to leave, right? But he forgets about this thing. So now I tell him, okay, dude, just so by the way, I feel that maybe I can give you some of the money back, so you don't feel like you lost. But even though you left, now I'm in a financial predicament and I can't pay this guy anymore, right? And I I tell him, and then I tell him, dude, why didn't you sell this thing? It's fine. I will lose my half of it because it's old already. We probably won't get the same amount of money for it anymore. Can he then say, no, dude, I don't want to sell it. You promise me the money, or I'll take you to court. Does he have a leg to stand on?
All right. This goes into the realm of law of contracts. All right. So your initial scenario status was that there wasn't anything in writing, right? However, verbal contracts are binding. Okay, if it's an agreement between the parties, there's a concert of minds to enter into a business venture, and you then undertake to bring certain things into this partnership agreement to buy and to share the expenses. Both of you are bringing resources into this, right? And the object obviously must be lawful, right? Into any contract. If it's unlawful contract, there's no such thing as an unlawful contract. All right. If you want to do something that's illegal,
Okay.
you cannot enforce it. It's got to be legal, right? And then it's got to be for the purposes of profit at the end of the day, and that you're going to share in the proceeds of the venture. And with your scenario, you've conducted this business. You've bought the Mercs, or the thing that you wanted to
Power bank.
to invest in, all right? And then eventually, because of time lag and the development of power packs, the system has gone beyond and the one that you bought is outdated. Okay, but it still has some value.
Yeah.
It still has some value, which means you can recoup the value. And if you want to sell it for whatever reason, okay, and you then agree that you can sell it. If there's no agreement that you cannot sell it, you can either approach your partner, say, listen, I'll pay you out for this, right? But can the person that you offer it to refuse to sell? No, right? In a partnership, right, when one party wants to get rid of something, the other party cannot say no.
But whose responsibility is to sell it in any case? Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. But if one party wants out of the contract, and if the other party doesn't want to consent to it, then you can approach the court to say, listen, if he doesn't want to go, which means it will cost you money to do, is it worthwhile? Is it worthwhile going to court to litigate if he doesn't want to do that? Okay. But nobody can force somebody to keep something they don't want to. In a partnership, you can't do that. Like Anisha said, divorce as well.
Exactly. I was thinking the same thing.
You cannot force somebody to be in a relationship because I don't want to get divorced. Right. For whatever reason. If one person wants to get divorced, the other person must just concede to it. The court would not force anybody to be in a relationship if they don't want to be in a relationship. That's basically like any partnership for that matter. Same in the partnership. It's a similar thing.
But if the guy says, look, why don't you sell this thing? You can have it, then you can sell it. But then then Roscoe says, no, but the thing is, you said you're going to pay me out, so I want the money from you. I don't want to sell it. Is that illegal? Really? And I'm saying, dude, I don't have the money right now, but I'll give it to you but no, he wants his money right now. Well, so then I say, sell the thing, but no, he says, no, I want my money from you. I don't want to still sell it. Is that the valid reason?
That type of scenario is well, it's not reality basically.
Okay.
Because if somebody says, listen, you promised me to get the money, right? Where was the money coming from? Okay. And if you do not have the funds and the only asset you have is the thing that you put money to purchase it, you can make agreement to negotiate. Listen, fine, I paid 50 Rand for this. I owe you 25. You give me 25 instead of my 50. Or I would buy you out your 50 of that product, and then I'll pay you. So it can be negotiated. So there's no need to go to litigation. That's what I say. The ADR, alternative dispute resolution, always works with the negotiating, mediation, and arbitration. That's what the courts are moving towards now, to avoid litigation over little issues that will consume a lot of time of the courts and save the parties money as well. It's a quicker way to resolve disputes, the ADR process. Right. So the courts are mooting this as well now. The court annex mediation processes, even in all divorce cases for that matter, most of them, the court will encourage people to negotiate a settlement. That's what the courts will do.
So basically, Roscoe, I'm not giving you money. You can go to
I
court.
told you, no, this is my lawyer. Like, yeah, that's
Is
my
it
lawyer
worthwhile?
says that
I
you
mean,
have
to go to
yeah.
court because you're going to go to court, you're going to waste your time. Even you're going to do it yourself. You can litigate yourself. You don't have to get a lawyer.
Look, it's fine until you can have it.
But
It's kind of-
yeah, you see, you negotiated. You can have it. Done.
No, I just wanted to clear that up. Thanks.
Look,
thanks for that
I've got
advice.
one more thing.
Yes.
So this comes from an example that a friend of mine saw. They were at Home Affairs in the early hours of the morning, and they witnessed quite clear collusion and corruption in terms of who gets at the front of the line, and there was some collusion between the Home Affairs and also the people who sort of walk the queues and sell seats effectively in the line. They recorded this incident of where the officials interface with the sort of like the queue mafia in terms of manipulating the queue. And then officials from the Home Affairs came out, confiscated their phone and said, you will have to, because of the Poppy Act, we're not letting you out of here until you delete those images from, those video recordings from your phone. Of course, those videos existed in a place called deleted items, which were quickly restored. But one of the things that the Home officials said was because of the Poppy Act or the Poppier. Now, if you see wrongdoing in police or officials, can the person claim that the Poppy Act is in the public, of course, not within the confines of a government building or a private property or anything like that? Were they coerced illegally into erasing that footage? Were they right about the Poppy Act? What is the Poppy Act, and how does that apply to cases of documenting corruption and whistleblowing, and even just walking around on the street making content?
Well, the protection of access to personal information, right? That's the access to that. It says personal information. Okay. If a scenario happens in public space, you're not accessing personal information of that individual.
Their argument was that, or the Home Affairs was that their personal information was their image.
It's debatable, but however, in terms of Poppy, right? It says personal information. Actual information about the person, not the identity of the person.
So that would
if you're taking something to identify somebody, you're not accessing personal information on that person. If that person is perpetrating a crime or in the process of committing a crime, if you see somebody murdering somebody or somebody robbing somebody, and you take a video clip of that, you're not contravening Poppy Act whatsoever. And if you find somebody, a taxi driver, misbehaving on the road, and you take a photograph or you make a video of it, it's not contravening the Poppy Act either.
Poppy Act is things like your address, your phone number, your things in a public...
Personal information, the protection of access to personal information. That's what it says.
So what happened in this particular example where the person was taken inside of Home Affairs, made to delete the videos, and they were taken into a Home Affairs office, and they were allowed to leave only on condition that they delete the videos that they filmed of alleged corruption by Home Affairs officials in the queue. What offences what did they trespass? What are the things that these guys did wrong? The officials.
The officials. Well, firstly, they do not have the right to ask anybody to delete any footage that was taken outside the premises. Okay? If they've been coerced or threatened in any form or manner whatsoever, they can lay a charge against the officials that did that. So they can. So
was it a case of kidnapping?
Kidnapping could be very strong.
Unlawful detention?
It's unlawful detention. Right. That's what you can do. But you're taking somebody into your premises. But then again, are they using force? For it to be unlawful, if you say, please come with me, and you go with them into this premises, if they physically manhandle you, it's an assault rather than kidnapping. Right? It's become they're assaulting your person. You're taking also a charge of assault. Right? And also, they're invading your privacy by accessing your phone and asking you to delete things that are not within the domain of actually being personal to that person who's asking you to delete in terms of accessing the personal information. It is also, the person can be charged for obstruction of justice, which means if you caught the person on video doing something illegal and he stops you from doing that, which means it's preventing you from being prosecuted. So there's a lot of things that he can be accused of and charged with for those allegations that you would present to the police in terms of what happened to you by the official that's taken you to Home Affairs. So to answer your question, no, they don't have the right to do that. If it happened outside the precinct of the Home Affairs on the public domain, and taking somebody's photograph is not invading their privacy.
If it is in a public space.
Correct.
So if I'm seeing something happening, I have the right to film police officers, ambulance work, EMS, or I have the right to film anybody.
Absolutely.
In the public
domain. I mean, if this was protected, photographs were protected, then we'll have every celebrity suing everybody, every paparazzi for taking their photo pictures in public.
And minors? Taking a video of minors and stuff like that?
Minors are protected.
Okay.
Minors are protected. Okay.
So if I'm doing, say for example, a travel video in Cape Town,
yes.
And I can show people the parks and things. If there are any minor children in that video, I have to blur their faces out to protect their images.
Correct.
And
for various reasons, obviously, because those videos can be used by people that want to perpetrate crimes against the minors.
Yes.
To identify the minors as well. Kidnapping, abduction, for whatever purpose, that type of for trafficking. So you got to protect the minors.
Yeah.
You need to do that. I think parents are very, very loath to put children on the internet and social media of a certain age and publicize that they have children.
Absolutely.
That type of thing. So you've got to be very cautious where minors are concerned. So minors are protected. Right? You just can't willy-nilly take photographs of minors if they're not your children and then post it on social media for whatever reason. Obviously, if the minor is involved in an accident and somebody runs away, yes, you can.
Of course.
But then also, obviously, you blank out the face of the minor. You don't have to publish the face of the minor. You block their identity out. But the minor can be from in that scenario.
Colin, look, I'm really grateful for you for you coming today to the studios. But there's one more thing I have to ask you. You've answered all the technical questions. What's the day in the life of Colin Geoffreys? What do you do when you get to work? What is your day of a typical sort of? What does your typical day look like?
Oh, being an attorney, there's no distinction between day and night, basically. So it keeps you awake. Your cases depends how involved you get into it. There's no set hours. You may have office hours if you do have an office physically going there and basically clocking in and then clocking out. But then once you do that, you go home and you still continue with the cases that you are involved in, because there's lots of preparations that got to be done, which behind the scenes that people do not know. Your clients do not know this, right? There's research that's got to be done. There's preparations that's got to be done, right? There's a lot of reading for an attorney, right? Some of us are lucky. We get other people to do the reading for us and the research. All right. But it still doesn't prevent or stop you from doing things for yourself. And yes, I eat, I sleep, I drink coffee and tea. All right. So yes, that's a normal thing that what people do to keep you, to sustain you. but it's also we try not to get too engrossed or personally involved in cases.
How hard is that
Right.
to
It is
keep
difficult.
that wall?
It's very difficult because I'm involved in family law, right? I do a lot of abduction of children, international abduction and local abduction of children as well. So it is difficult, and especially also when I involve myself in mediation of family matters as well, where you listen to a lot of issues between parties, spouses, and boyfriends and girlfriends, and people breaking up. And then they look at you for advice and what you do and how you sort of assist them. And yes, if you take a personal interest, then it affects you. But if you treat everyone as if not without any feeling and emotion, you've got to do that. All right? But then again, you cannot get yourself too engrossed emotionally because then it'll affect you. So there's a time that you cut off and say, this matter is now done and over with, and move on to the next matter. That's what you need to do.
What's been one of your highlights, most satisfying cases that you've been involved in so far?
Oh my goodness.
I got you on the spot, but you know.
Well, there are a few cases that I've done. Okay, that sort of boosted my career, which was good as well. I think I started off as an early attorney as well. It was good when I just started off. It was good to be publicized in the papers, that type of thing, for doing something as well. It's satisfying when you've been able to see that justice has been done for your client. Is gratifying as well. So that type of thing is good. And in my situation, when I'm dealing with children and dealing with families and family type of thing as well, when you try and resolve the matters and you try and mediate processes, and then in a situation where there's disagreement and issues arises, there's a lot of emotion that's involved, and people, they walk away from that, right? And then if you're able to reconcile their differences, that is like, yes, I've done something. Although there still would be this issue, this tension between the parties, but you're able to resolve them, and they are then able to communicate and talk to each other as humans, and that is being successful. Yeah.
Colin Geoffreys, thank you so much for coming in. You've taught me a lot that I didn't know before the time. Get that certificate from that cop at that roadblock. Always ask him for that certificate and stand up for your rights. Get a lawyer if you can. Make use of the resources that are available to you. We'll put some useful legal links in the description of the show. Thank you, Nantel. And we out till next Monday.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.